and welcome to day 4. I can't believe already we're at day 4. It's gone very quick because we've had very uh, interesting and fruitful conversations. So I wish I could do this every day, just jump on and have the opportunity and to speak with our publishers and have people exchange ideas all the time. But anyways, just while the participants are joining and coming through, I want to remind again, just first of all, say our sincere thank you to our media partners, our sponsor as well, GSO, and our media partners, FIPP, the European Business Review, Czech Publishers Association, that has helped us to promote and be an advocate for this initiative. Monetization Week has come from, after seeing in the Q3 last year, beginning of the first quarter this year, but publishers weren't able to recover the drop in revenue because of various things, whether it was macro trends, the fact that they're seeing changes in the search landscape and different other factors. People were starting trying to do things that they didn't know how to do things. People started to collect data for third party. They didn't know how to leverage these opportunities to further monetize, and the conversations were coming around monetization in general. So I spoke about it. I spoke about that, and then I decided I wanted to do a practical hands-on from personal experience from many of our publishing leaders. So this is how it came about. We've got an exciting talk today. We've got to talk about how to actually build a monetization team. And because we've started to talk about many of the tactics, how to actually play, how to actually execute it. Had case studies from people like professionals like Gabriella from Fanarina to Radu from CC Legal Matters and so forth. Now let's look at how to actually build a team to help make the sales and revenue happen. So with that, we're doing a fireside chat. So it's going to be more of a casual chat where we're going to be going through and setting the scene in terms of the internal versus external point of view of building a monetization team. We've got Susanne from Stratechmedia, from Stratechmedia, who is the founder and the previous exec from Bold, Denmark. And on the other hand, we have Radu, the founder and the CEO of Reflector Media. We're going to be presenting the two sides of the arguments on internal versus external sales and revenue operations, and then we'll go through some of our initial questions, and we're going to be having a return of our famous poll, which has been pretty useful in instigating more questions and making sure that we grab all our attendees to join and take part in the chat. So with that in mind, one more thing before we jump into the conversation, just in terms of admin and housekeeping, as Saida has been doing so kindly as well, please feel free to ask your questions. Any questions that you have, our panelists are here to answer any questions for you guys, so please feel free to put in the chat, and we'll be fielding those questions as we go along in the discussion. So with that, let's set the scene. So Susanne, I'll pass it over to you if we can do a quick brief intro, and let's set the scene about what you're seeing from a macro perspective on how media organizations are approaching revenue ops or building sales teams, and sort of what are you seeing that are maybe the opportunities or gaps happening at the moment?
Sure. Just do a quick introduction. My name is Susanne. I'm the founder of Stratechmedia and I have over 16 years of experience. I've had the fortune in my career to lead a monetization team and build them up. So I think for me now, as a consultant helping independent publishers, what I'm trying to help them to figure out, like, what are they missing in their team in order to succeed, and what can it sometimes make sense to sort of outsource, right? And I think right now, when I talk to many publishers in Denmark, but also outside of Denmark, is that it is such a big challenge daily, but it's mostly due to like the tech just evolving so quickly and just being able to catch up. Many of them are really good at providing good content and also have some sales strategy in place, but just always keeping it up to date and figured out like what is the newest way to do something, and diversifying your monetization strategy is a struggle, and they just don't have the resources to it. In Denmark, I think there's just not enough people that is educated in for instance, programmatic ad tech or in the ad tech space, because it's not an education that you can get anywhere. You actually kind of had to be taught how to do programmatic. What does it mean? How do you optimize? And whether you use Google as an ad server or something like that. So in order for people to hire someone, they need to go find it from their competitors. And so we just kind of go around and pick people from each other's media. And then once in a while, we train someone. The thing right now, one of the biggest struggle is like lack of people in for the publishers. Yeah.
There's a lot we're going to unpack from that. So that's a good good introduction to set the scene. Radu, I want to bring you in at the moment. You know, I think to give a bit of a preface to everyone here. You know, in our chats with my interactions with Radu, he was speaking a lot about some, you know, because they have initially been more dependent on search as well, and there's obviously been a lot of changes around that, and publishers are seeing the impact of that. They've been able to really navigate that through some innovative ways. So, Radu, maybe I'll pass it over to you just to, again, introduction, and if you can let us know what the situation is at Reflector in terms of the sales thing.
Yes, hello everyone. Radu here, founder and CEO at Reflector Media. We own and operate a handful of mostly tech-focused properties. These are windowsreport.com, macobserver.com, mspoweruser.com, and we also have a bunch of other smaller forums which we acquired recently. As a conclusion to what's been happening in the industry, especially in the last year, our biggest fear is that there is no long-term reward for producing content. So that means that we have to shift gears towards trying to identify properties which have a very strong resilience in front of Google updates and things like that. So producing like decent content alone is not enough, even if you know, you're producing content that's considered decent by your readers, by your longtime readers. We now feel that this is simply a monopoly where you can't really control what you're doing. So it's one thing to monetize traffic that you have, but it's another thing to you know, struggle with getting traffic. So, and looking back in how big our company was and how we have managed to sort of evolve, I would say that it makes us become even more agile. And to be honest, it basically forces us to shift in areas which we didn't navigate before, right? So like we were always independent media, and we took pride in the fact that we were bootstrapped and we never took outside money, and we still kept going. And now I would say that we are readjusting and we are probably shifting towards new areas of growth. And one particular area could be the fact that we have identified that, for example, Mac Observer is viewed by Google as a strong brand because it's a very old website. On another hand, we have the forums which are in the incipient phase, but we are seeing some traction there. So this completely changes how we operate media and how we, manage expectations and the budgets that we set. But we are still in the game, and we still think that there is room to grow. But long term, I don't think there's, for anyone entering this business, like, to start a new business, I think it's incredibly challenging. Like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when I started, it was, El Dorado, and right now it's all dry, and everything is bereft of the actual resources that are there. So this makes it incredibly challenging to produce traffic and subsequently to then monetize what you have been able to capture in the end, right?
I appreciate that. I appreciate the honest perspective and honest situation, like how you shared the situation. So I want to be able to bring the parallels with your experiences here by shifting gears towards understanding, helping to, it's in line with similar thread of conversation from yesterday to today. What's sort of, and this is both the question both towards you, how have you both sort of looked at the strategies in terms of being able to determine how to best set up the team, Susanne, based on your past experience, or rather now to be able to sort of to be resilient, I guess. What's been the approach that you guys have taken? I'll get Susanne to start. Sorry.
All right. I think it takes like a village. I think it's hard. Like, you need so many different skill sets in order to succeed here. So that's what I've done always. Sort of like, we've not necessarily been many of the same people, but whenever I could see sort of that I'm leaving money at the table because there's something that I don't understand, or I can see that maybe I'm doing too much of something, or that I don't have the time, I've always like amped up my team. But right now with all like with the struggles from traffic, I think what I am talking to publish about, where I would use my resources mostly, is that you might need more traffic, but once you get your users on your website, it's the session per page view, like finding your KPIs for this and figure out, like, once you get the users in there, is there something that you can do now to have them read one more page? Because that is the only way, as I see right now, that you have, or one of the good ways you have right now to actually grow. And if you get one more page view, which makes sense, you can print more banners and you can make more money on the user that you got in. So it may be a lot harder to get traffic in, but then I would just mainly focus on finding people who are really good at keeping them once you're there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. And yeah, I guess rather from your perspective, how do you achieve the same, particularly as you're going through this process of considering new brands, new offerings as well? Like, I'm sure that makes it a lot more more difficult, multifaceted, because you're not just focusing on the existing properties, you're actually acquiring new properties at the same time to be resilient.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we're basically changing how we do things. So like, all of our websites, they were meant in a certain way and they were operated in a specific way, right? They are WordPress based websites. So first of all, you would have a set of SOPs which dictate, okay, we have the editors, they come in, they create content, and they are assigned keywords or assignments, and then that once that article is published, or once we see that it's bringing in traffic, then it maybe gets passed on to the monetization team, or maybe that particular article was created as an effort out of a partnership. So that was a very clear way of producing content, which we have done for 10 plus years, right? And initially it was done on a single website, and it was big enough, as I said, was one of the biggest tech websites in the world. But gradually that decreased, but we still stick to the same procedures because they don't change, right? Things don't change. So we adjust to the Google updates, but the core remains the same. So now basically what we are doing, we sort of have to sift through the existing personnel and see if they are fit for the new reality. So for example, when you have to operate a forum, that's something different. You have to find areas to entice your users to interact between themselves. And that's, again, a beta project. And a third new line of business that we have is having a being minority shareholder in software companies. So that means that we have to operate on their existing properties as content producers, which we know how to do, but in the same time as affiliate managers, for example. So what we have done in order to optimize the teams was to, first of all, find fruitful partnerships, because without the partnerships, you're not doing anything. We've never relied on ads only. So we always struck deals, and which some of them initiated from affiliate networks. Others, maybe they started from sponsored posts, but we wanted more. So we basically expanded the monetization team based on, okay, what's the actual incentive that this partner is looking to get? Is he looking to get new users, or is he just looking to buy sponsored posts because of SEO? So we always, and I would say that has been probably one of the most successful things that we've done, because we've landed some big partnerships. And that way, this type of doing business has taught us how to generate new leads for software companies. And having this know-how further on prompted us to buy an equity in a software company, which, to be honest, is what still keeps us alive, to be completely fair. So I would say that in our case, we are 100% guerrilla, and we're always grinding, because at our peak, we had more than 100 people. So there's it was never easy business for us. We were always under pressure, and there hasn't been a single week where things stayed the same in the last 5 years. We always change things. So as a summary, I would say that those that remain in the teams are probably the most versatile employees and managers, those that can adapt to the changes that are coming.
Radu, how much of the percent of the changes that you made makes up the current revenue of the business?
I would say that traffic went down probably 50 to 60%, and subsequently revenue did as well. So basically right now we are some sort of a media and software company. So it's very hard to pull together a P&L, because you have completely different businesses. But the media side is, I mean, if things don't change, we'll probably have to either, completely exit the media side and turn into a lead generation company. Like we would acquire full rights to a software company, because as I said, and there's no reason to not tell the truth. For example, Windows Report has been slammed with the classifier. Since August last year, we have been getting insane amounts of links and press mentions, but still after the updates, it's 65% down, which is complete nonsense. And those that gained the queries that we lost, again, it's not helpful content. It's content that's even worse than ours. So at this stage, you have no option. After so many sleepless nights, what am I going to do to start a fight with an algorithm, because we now with the recent discoveries, we know that it doesn't make sense. You know, it's completely botched, and what they say is not what they mean. So basically, there's no reason to operate long term unless you have a property that is resilient to the updates, or you have direct visitors, or you have local media. You know, there's ways of doing that, but there's no way for you to completely reshape an organization which was focused on being independent, right? It was never part of a trust or a bigger media brand. So as soon as that search traffic is gone, there's really no alternative, to be honest, because you cannot rig the game. Only Google can rig the game. So at this stage, when it concerns us, we're using our own funds to sustain the media business, at least on some websites, hoping that label will be removed. So this is like a temporary period. If that label isn't removed, then it's probably going to be, you know, some of the properties are not going to be sustainable. That's the reality. So that's it.
No, thank you for that. I guess to bring parallels to that, Susanne, I guess you can, I guess, hearing Radu's situation and how he spoke about sort of different aspects of partnerships, different aspects of elements that helped build up various aspects of teams. From an external point of view, is there particular stages that you have to look at to hire particular team members, or how do you sort of, to be resilient, how do you sort of set up the team? Is it based on the stage of what your business is at, like, or even in the situation like Radu was saying, where you have to pivot because it's really about sustaining, to stay resilient and survive? How do you sort of look at those two situations when you're setting up a team?
I mean, I've not been in his situation, and I find the story it's heartbreaking to hear that this is what is happening. I think, however, what I have for many years is that the way of making money has changed so many times. Website, mobile, app, and like at some point I was only having direct sales people who would like call up the media agencies or call up brands, and then some point I only hired programmatic specialists because that was the way it was going. And then in the end, ending back having direct people. So I think when is the right time is sort of, I think you need to look at like how are you monetizing and what areas are you monetizing. If you're doing it yourself in-house, and where do you think you should improve, or what are you not monetizing on, or is there something that you should do different? If programmatic takes up the vast majority of your revenue stream, I think you should hire more direct people, because then there's room for improvement there, right? And vice versa. If direct is what it is, and you don't have that many deals, then someone who understands that, you should go for that. I think it's I'm in just in time sort of person. You should not have people waiting around just to have them. But there is something to be said for having enough people, so you don't leave money on the table. I've been in a situation at one point where 3 employees were left within like 2 months because someone else, like they got a great opportunity somewhere else and just left me with like 3 months of like nightmare, because you had to go and find new people and train them, do stuff like that. And from that learning, I sort of took like, I always needed at least one more that I actually needed. And of course, making sure that that person was more or less just making enough money so he covered its own salary, or in that way, because then it was a neutral person, but always make sure that I would never be in that same position again. Yeah. So I think it's hard to say one specific point where you should hire a new member, but I think it's always been sort of easy for me to see like, where do we fall short? Where do I think we have greater potential in earning money? And I need to go find a person who can help me with that.
Thanks. That makes sense, Susanne. Radu, how are you managing the requirements of adjusting the team in terms of like finding based on the like foreign asset or the software lead gen aspect of it? How are you sort of fitting in terms of who's doing what with the revenue and the requirements on building up teams now?
Well, we have or at least we used to have a pretty straightforward process, an SOP. That was actually one of the reasons at our peak, we had a massive revenue, which probably put us in line with, on the verge of being acquired by bigger companies. So that's also thanks to a good set of rules and procedures, because we understood the game and the rules and how to produce content. So what we've done was to mass produce content in the initial phase as a company. And once we realized that we can monetize that content better, then we set out and produced a new set of rules, a new SOP, which basically explained how to monetize the content and how to create new partnerships. And in order to do that, we basically created a new role. So within the company, I'm the CEO, there's the COO, which we basically, we decided that there's going to be a lot of ongoing operations and organizations. And we are not a tech company, so we don't need a CTO. We're not a software company. So we have Alex, who is the COO. And then because we realized that our pedigree is making money besides programmatic, making money through affiliate and direct deals. So then we created a new C role, which is the CMO, but it's not the CMO from Chief Marketing, but Chief Monetization Officer. So, and that would be Edgar, our colleague. So, and we created a new team under what we call the Chief Monetization Officer, basically as a pun to the marketing officer, because we didn't have any products, right? So our product was our traffic, which we had back then. So once we created that, then we had a bunch of people that were working in this area, but there was no particular structure, right? So we created the structure. We made sure that we have a team of copywriters, which were implementing the deals that we had. So we didn't impact editorial. Editorial was publishing content on its own, whereas copywriters were doing like product placements, stuff like that. So we wouldn't, the monetization part wouldn't interfere. So we carefully separated the roles within the company. We had managers that were overseeing the copywriters, and the managing editor of a property was in touch with the managing monetization manager, whatever. So we created roles that were clearly defined, and they were actually defined in such a way that as soon as we were planning on buying a new property, we would basically start monetizing before publishing new content. So looking at the traffic that's present on a website was crucial in our decision to acquire or not a new website. So basically, once we bought the website, because they had, 500 pages, which they were simply, non-affiliate links, but they were already sending traffic to those pages, and it was, it was a no-brainer. And that website wasn't biased or something. So we simply bought the website and we modified the affiliate links, which were present already, but you were not getting any credit. And that's, that's the stupidity and the irony of Google, because Google is the biggest affiliate in the world, and he gets to put everywhere affiliate links. But if you do it, then they slap you in the face. But, it's what people do. They buy stuff, and you're the publisher. So you normally, that's your business, right? You're supposed to make money from affiliate links. So that's probably the biggest stupidity that I've ever seen coming from Google. And the real answer to that is obviously because they do it, right? So if they do it, you don't want to steal money from Google. But coming back to your question, while we were operating as a media business, everything was very clear, right? We were producing content, we were monetizing content, hire more people, produce more content, and so on and so forth. And it was doing well. But once it stopped growing, and once we had the partnerships with the software companies, then we realized that we understand how an affiliate manager works, because that's what we do from the publisher side. So then we set out and we created a new job role, which is affiliate manager, but for the software company, where we had a minority partnership, right? So then we operated as a SaaS as well. So that was a new role that we defined before hiring or before promoting a person from within the team. So we defined roles that were adhering to the SOPs.
And did that sort of taking the minority stakes help you to sort of test the waters before sort of now considering to potentially just pivot away from media or pivot towards growing a bigger share and stuff? Like, you think that particularly in areas where you're launching new products or bundling products that you need to take, how would you say, like, I mean, I guess not many other publishers would be able to buy in stakes in other companies, but how would you be able to test the waters if you were in that situation? Do you think that there's any other ways that publishers can consider doing that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, depending on who exactly, for example, if I was a publisher, I don't know, doing local media, for example, because that's something that works, it doesn't go down as much. I would obviously monetize the local media, and that's like from the top of my head. I would, people would subscribe to a newsletter if it's local media because you want to be notified about what exactly is happening in your community. People would get WhatsApp alerts, right? So everything changes depending on which type of media you're operating. If you operate a super high affiliate, let's say casino or whatever, VPNs, or once again, it's always depending on who is your audience. If your audience is more educated, like if you know the big company from US, Industry Dive, where they do B2B business, and they sold 30 websites for almost $500 million. And for somebody from the outside, they have no clue what Industry Dive does. But Industry Dive is a portfolio of 30 websites read by 20 to 50,000 people a month. But all those people, they are C, right? They are CEOs, they are COOs, they are supply chain managers, and they make millions because they capture the attention of decision makers. So if you have a website like that, then it's obviously, you don't need to, because I was actually speaking with the CEO of Industry Dive at the conference, at the FIP conference, I think. Yeah, it was in Barcelona. And they were saying that we don't need to replicate Wall Street Journal or Financial Times because they have this website called Banking Dive. And I asked them, and why would I go and read bankingdive.com? The content isn't that great, to be honest. But they've captured an audience and they've solidified that audience, and they read Banking Dive in the same way that they read whatever Supply Chain Dive, which is something totally alien for me. But that audience is extremely valuable, right? So if I were to put myself in the shoes of another person, and be in media, I would love to be in B2B media, because that's obviously the biggest gain that you would have. You don't have to rely on Google. You don't have to rely, you just have to make yourself noticed. But that's, once again, it's incredibly difficult. The second one, I would say local media. If I were in local media, again, monetizing is done through a different way. So we simply, in our case, it was an opportunity for us, but there's, so much different media opportunities. Local media, or I don't know, traditional media, first of all, has a lot of direct sales, right? You have inbounds. If you write about agriculture in Germany, or I don't know, somewhere else, then you have a lot of advertisers knocking at your door. So to a certain extent, what we have done is actually the most difficult thing, because we've created something in the big ocean. We tried to fight with everyone, but there was just a single rule, right? Google dictates the rules. So, it depends on the media type and who's operating the brand, and how exactly is that brand capturing the audience and then monetizing that.
I appreciate the perspective. I think the way that you answered it was interesting, because you just gave 3 examples, ways of people to consider the options. I'm just going to pause just for a brief second. Let me just launch, everyone, I'm just going to launch the poll. It's 3 simple questions, and we'll come back to the continuation of the chat. And again, once again, I would really encourage everyone to leave their questions in. We've got experts here that can help you to sort of field even or brainstorm some ideas that you might be having with the RevOps team development and sales challenges that you might have. So yeah, so we've got 3 simple questions. Everyone, how many people are focusing on sales? Do you outsource or do you do internally? Which I'm going to also shift to Susanne on a little bit more to discuss. And then how do you acquire talent? The reason why we're going to sort of flag this is just, again, to help you to look at the organization structure. So, okay, let's shift gears. Susanne, as I was mentioning, Radu's taking much of an internal approach, I guess, on this, and he clearly identified pretty interesting ways of being able to structure this through traffic, finding the traffic and so forth. What do you see, Susanne? First of all, are you seeing more internal or outsourcing? And I guess when should you consider either or when you are looking to build a monetization team?
Well, I think for what Radu is saying is what I took away from what he's saying in terms of building a team is right now, if it always been true, but right now more than ever, is you need to hire people that are curious, because you need to ask questions. And I think like the way of talking how you could pivot, or if you have to do something, it'll be B2B. Maybe you just need people on your team to be like, what are we doing right now? Is there other ways that we can be doing something? Is there other kind of content that we're not producing today that are monetizing well? What are we seeing in the industry? And is there something different? Can we pivot this to B2B? I don't say you should do it, but maybe you could do something different, right? So it's the curiosity that he's addressing that I really love, but you need to have that in your team. And I don't think that you can buy curiosity. You could probably find like a lot of consulting. I'm a consultant, so please buy me, but I can come and talk and inspire you. But sometimes these questions, you need to, in order just to have the consultant in, you need to have those questions internally, being like, could we do something different? What should we be doing different? And who can help us do that, right? And kind of look at your team and being like, those people, like they need to ask questions. And for improving on the situation they are today, for me and my team, I've always been like, do you completely understand our business? Do you understand how we make money? Are you daily asking yourself, is this a good way? Could we have done different? How good is today compared to tomorrow? And what is the changes? Just so you always understand the numbers on your website, on your revenue really well. So I think someone asked in the chat or something, someone said something about AI is changing up the game. And of course it is. And there's many ways of addressing AI, but I think there's also the way of addressing it is the way that you're looking at your articles and the way you're monetizing on your articles. Is there something you're doing there? Are people reading your articles? Are they reading all the way down, all the way through? Could you put ad units different places that you are today? What's the scroll depth that you start? And there's many of these AI tools you can use for that. But it has to be gotten with curiosity from the people on your team, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think what we're seeing from the poll responses and what you're saying from what I can get is that you always need to have a core internal team, like not outside of the CEO or founder that essentially needs to handle this. It's the question of whether or not they're able to think innovatively to figure out ways or to resolve the issue about revenue. And if they can't do it themselves, then you need potentially support from a consultant or external to keep challenging people internally. So yeah, we've got a hand raised, so I'm gonna pass over to Dejan to ask his question. I think if I pronounced it correctly, apologies, but yeah, please. Yeah, feel free to ask your question, Dejan. I think we have a technical issue.
No more raised hand.
No, I understand. But if you're having a technical issue, did you want to maybe put it into the chat? I'd love to just prioritize your question as well. Whilst we're waiting for your question. we've got another comment saying entrepreneurs become sole entrepreneurs to minimize unnecessary expenses such as hiring incompetent employees. I guess so. That's very honest of you to say, but
Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, you should never hire incompetent employees. However, I think I see the struggle right now from a lot of the publishers that I'm talking to is that maybe they're not sold, maybe they're two or three others, and they're really good at producing content. But I think it's really hard to be excellent in producing content and also excellent in business is completely two different things. And if you have like, if you outsource the rev up, then sure, then you sit around, you wait for a check every month, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not, right? But if you just focus on the content and not necessarily on how to improve of that or making sure you understand exactly how the money are being made, I think you will struggle. And if incompetent employees should never be hired, but there's just don't do that. I mean, like, I don't think necessarily that you should only be on yourself. I think that's a lot. Then you have a lot of outsourcing to do. And you outsourcing to people where they probably do more like a one size fit all situation on you, which is amazing, right? For most part. But if you maybe had a little more people hired that could help you out, I think you would be better off in optimizing a little bit, even though it's outsourced.
Yeah, thanks for adding on top of that. That's pretty good as well. I mean, did you if we're gonna start from scratch, did you have any tips on what people should look to do or what they can do? Yeah, sorry, I guess. What advice would you give if people want to start from scratch, basically? We have, I think, from the poll, let me just see. It seems like everyone's surprisingly all have in-house. We've got a few of them that have responded that are saying 3 members over 7 members. So yeah, but if there's people that haven't responded here, what would you advise them in terms of how to build from scratch?
So they all have in-house advertising?
Yeah, from what
What do
the
you say?
polls, sorry,
Yeah.
there's about sorry, the poll was saying we've got 40% of our participants that have responded, and pretty much all of them are in-house. But I guess assuming that 60% don't have internal team members, what would you advise them in terms of building from scratch?
Oh, I think it's hard. You always if you start building in-house, you need a couple things, right? You need you need the salesperson, but you also need someone who can make stuff happen in Google Ad Manager and have that print, and then the programmatic. So you need 3 people, I think, if you are building it in-house, most likely, right? But I think what I've always done is I'm a very straightforward person when I hire someone, and I'm kind of making sure that they understand that when they do that, this is their responsibility. And I really believe in empowering people. And if they don't live up to that, I mean, of this is your responsibility, of course, then they become the employees you don't want, right? So I think what I want is to make sure that I have employees that are not afraid to say that what I am saying is dumb. I want to have employees that make sure that they will speak against me because I might not know the truth all the time. They are probably better at a lot of what they're doing than me. So I need to make sure that they can stand up and believe in themselves and say, this is the way to go. Because it's too hard to be good at everything. And once you become the CEO or whatever you are, you're not necessarily the expert in many areas anymore, but you need to have a team of experts. And I think you just need to make sure that you have that so you actually do trust them. And then actually act on that trust and that they know what they're doing the best. But I think where I would do most is whether you outsource or not, I would want to have one person who fully understands. Like if you have outsourcing, look into a dashboard, it says CPM or eCPM or CPD or whatever, some abbreviation, that everyone knows what this means and understand how to improve it. And if you have them outsourced, I would want them to be like, why are my CPM this and this? How can I change them? What does it need to get CPM one more? Or what changes should I do on my site to do that? So I think it's on the, you need to be curious and analytic, would be the best way to go. And then I always would advise to have someone who's a salesperson, like a direct sales, because programmatic is many things and it's amazing, but it's also problematic for many people. And I think the direct salesperson that calls up and connects on a personal level just makes a huge difference. And you get in campaigns that you wouldn't normally do otherwise if you just have it just programmatically, because it's different money from all the agencies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings a good point. I want you to also answer these questions also, Susanne, but I want to maybe bring in Radu first. We have a participant Q&A that says, in your opinion, what constitutes a healthy relationship between direct sales and programmatic? Radu, maybe if I can start with you on that question, and then we'll come back to Susanne.
Yes, that's a very good question, and I did mention it in our previous calls. I think go for whatever makes you the most money. It really don't, of course, you're not going to spam your website and put banners everywhere. But in the same time, if you go and you look and you read techradar.com, there's, banging banners everywhere and nobody, people keep reading them. So Google on one side says that, experience, blah, 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 matters the most. And their content isn't that great, right? So if they were really if they were really honest, they should slam that website with a penalty, right? Because it's almost impossible to read that content. So with this in mind, if there's some sort of a cartel deal that's going on the very top, why should you play by the rule? Why you should be the little stupid dog that, plays by the rule, and the big boys get, to lavish. So I would say go for whatever makes the biggest amount of money. Simple. If direct sales makes more money, and that goes, without being obvious to anyone, whatever, go for that. If programmatic makes more money, go for that. Whatever combination. That depends on, again, which type of media site do you have? Because if you have a local newspaper, how many sponsored posts are you getting, or how many inbound campaigns, or all those things. If you're just independent, but you cannot really drive up programmatic that much because there's always going to be a cap. Once again, where's your traffic coming from? Who might be your new advertisers other than the ones that you've been dealing with? And where is really the pedal that you can push? And if you find one, press it harder, because you don't know when it's going to end.
That's right. Susanne, your thoughts?
I think it's true that there's not one answer to that. It's different businesses. However, I do think that I'm not saying it's 50-50, but it's just like, I don't like to depend on any one thing. So if let's say you're having a 70% programmatic revenue, I would spend most of my time building up my direct, just because that would be the place where I could see the best improvement. So I have something going on for me. That's amazing. And you should nurture that, but the opportunity lies in the direct. And in case of the programmatic goes down, it's really good that you spent your time nurturing something that potentially will go up, right? I think sometimes I've had at some point we did have like a 70% programmatic. And I come being from Denmark, Safari is the 90% of all traffic come through Safari almost.
Wow.
So it was really tough when they start hitting really hard on the cookies 4 or 5 years ago, right? So all of a sudden you saw CPMs going down, you did like that. And I was building a programmatic team because everything was going that way. And I'm like, now they're blind. So now I need to do the direct team. I'm building that up, right? And I've had where I only had 5-6 direct clients that took up 70% of my revenue. And maybe one of them was 50% of that. And it makes you vulnerable. right? So diversification of your revenue source, I think it's the most important one, right? And I think for the programmatic, there's many ways of doing that. There's the open auction, there's the deals, and the programmatic guaranteed. So I think once again here, it really depends on what programmatic is. Because it's, what it is for most part is uncertain. So it can stop from day to day, right? And open auction, if that is 50% of your revenue, that is also jarring to someone, right? I would focus on getting something a little bit more reliable, just to find like where is your bottom, like how low can you go, like what's the worst day and what's the minimum you need to make, and find a way that you will always get that in, if that makes sense, and then build from there, right?
No, that makes sense. No, thank you both for answering that. But Gwen, hopefully we gave you a 360 picture on that. I just want to add a quick comment on this, and then I want to bring full circle the conversation towards people, because that's what matters the most here. I've also read as well, and through like independent sort of observation, that at least having three sort of sources of revenue like is a key, whatever stage you're at, so that you can be sustainable and not sort of putting your eggs in one basket. So I think there's a maturity model image that I shared on the first day. You keep adding on to that, then that sort of helps you de-risk the business as you keep evolving it. So anyways, I can bring that up tomorrow on the first party strategies session again. But yeah, final part of our chat, talking about talent acquisition and people. That's what matters the most. So we, interestingly enough, we do have a pretty even split about how people acquire talent: review job sites, search, LinkedIn. Someone else said other. If whoever's that other person, if you can kindly put that other in the chat, that'd be probably useful, because we're always looking for talent irrespective of the situation. But Radu, how did you find your talent and your team, and what do you advise as well in the current day and age to find the best talent given the
Well,
situation?
yes. When you thrive, it's easy to find talent. When you don't, it's quite difficult, because obviously you were not operating on the same number. So that I would say is the answer for now. But what we've done in the past, I think maybe one of the mistakes, probably the biggest mistake that we've done, we rely too much on internal people. We rely too much on internal promotions and on the same people. So there was too much trust put on the same people, and there should have been more reshuffling and adding more people. The problem is that we are based in Romania and our business is mostly US focused. So it's not that we could have found in our local market people that understand this business. So basically we were sort of forced to keep growing the same people and work with a bunch of freelancers from outside the world. But if I would go back in time, I would I would say that I would probably fire 70% of the company. If I would know, what would have been the outcome, that's probably what I would have done. And I would have focused even more on making this in, a standardized, even more SOP heavy organization than it was. But in the same time, we didn't simply want to have a money printing machine. We wanted to have a company with real people that go to the office. So with this in mind, it's also important to note, like, how big is your organization and what exactly are you trying to achieve? Because if you're simply trying to if you're a solo or if you're a freelancer, then decisions are, easier. If you're just expanding, you're just looking to make ends meet. But if you're trying to grow a company, then you're also sort of building a home for people, right? And then you have costs associated with your office, because if you want to do that, then there's costs associated to that. So then that means you're hiring locally. So when you're hiring locally, then the pool of people shrinks. So you have less options. And in the same time, you're now forced to hire freelancers whom you don't really control. So, and there's a lot of friction between you and the freelancers, and there's a lot of, people drop and they don't stay committed. I would say this has actually been a very very big issue for us. Finding talent and maintaining talent, especially now, it's very, it's quite hard because you're not thriving anymore. So obviously you have to cut down on expenses.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, sorry to hear that this situation is making it difficult to maintain. I guess is there. I know that you said about having a very tight SAP and the way that you'd want to go back and do that if you want to start again. But is there any aspect, like particularly in building the monetization team, like making sure that you have at least the core members that will be loyal to stick with you guys, or like is there any sort of truth in life in terms of helping to the success and how you built it up that you can maybe share with the audience?
Yes, what I would do is probably I would make sure that I would establish some sort of a learning path, a learning curve, and I would make the onboarding process much more streamlined, because there was a lot of information that didn't transpire and it got lost in the way. And instead of like new hirees, instead of them learning from whatever documents, they kept asking questions, which I hate. They kept talking on Slack, on a personal message, when they had the information right there. So if you need, hey, this is your learning document, go and read it, stay there 1 week, because if they don't read it, if they don't learn it, then they would keep, buzz everyone, and they would keep. And we had the instances where, someone was asking questions like 3 months after, and they were supposed to do the onboarding right in 1 week. So there needs to be a very clear onboarding process, and you need to be very strict, because in the end, it's going to bite you in the ass. That time is going to, it's rolling. It's like a rollover effect, and they will keep asking people. And I refer to, like, people say there's a toxic culture in companies, but they never say about, these people that they don't learn. I would make a label for people that don't learn. I don't know how we could call them, but let's say toxic employees, whatever. They don't tell you that they tell, yeah, I read, I read everything. And then they keep asking people around, how can I do this? How do I log in there? How do I do that? Because you don't have any opportunity to, actually see if they're right or not. So you sort of trust them, right? Because you're managing an independent business. So if I would go back in time, I would be very strict about that.
Susanne,
like
please
very
jump in.
Strict.
Yeah, right. Sorry, because we have a few minutes to that. Susanne has some thought. I want her to jump in, please. Go ahead.
I mean, like, I understand that. I think that will be frustrating as well. I completely understand that. But I think it's more on the onboarding process then. And as you mentioned, but it's more like maybe I think what I've learned more is that I should care a lot more. I do care. But the moment I cared a lot for my employees, I actually often got the output out that I wanted, because maybe they didn't understand that they should go learn. I understand, but it's more that in Denmark, you have 3 months on trial, right? So there's a bit of a thing, like we don't fire enough of people on trial. Normally what happens is you're on trial and you continue, even though maybe you're not doing so well and not doing that. So fire when you need to, or like make sure that in that trial period, you get rid of the people who are slacking. But spending time on finding new people is so costly, and it's hurting your business so much on what you're not doing and what they're not doing. So while you're training people, for me, it's like really, really care for them and like hold their hands. I mean, even though you don't have the time, but keep explaining it over and over and over and over and over again. And I think for me, one thing I always kind of want to do is make sure that Monday is a good day, and that's the feeling that they should get. So they should be in a place where Monday is a good day, and what that means, like they should be looking forward to go to work. And I think people actually like to feel useful. And I don't feel that they will thrive if they don't feel like they know what they're doing. So I think we need to help them a little bit more. At least that's always been my philosophy. And then in the end, I think it pays off. But yeah, of course, if people are not reading and doing what they do, they are annoying other people, and that costs a lot of money. But
fire them in day 8.
Well, maybe, yeah, because there's a 3-month learning period. And you have set up, and if you're not progressing into that, then of course you should go.
Yeah, it's the same
if
legislation.
You are progressing, Yeah.
here as well. So we also have a 3 month trial. So we always do it on the last day.
Yeah, but
and
I think, but I think people are just like, I'm not saying not firing enough, but it's just like, it's there for a reason. I don't think it's being used very often. But if people are not progressing, as you're saying, they should get out, and you should start wasting, using your time something different. But I think it's just more about spending a lot of time in the beginning to make sure they get it right and make sure they sit right next to you and understand, like, when you have learned that in 1 year from now, this is the amazing stuff you'll be able to do. Or I think that's always worked for me.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
And making sure they understand what they should do, like what their role is. Yeah, sorry.
I think
We're done.
no, I think so. No. I love when we're coming to I love that we go over time rather than under time, and I think that the flow of the conversation today has been very interesting, very real. So with that, Radu, thank you so much for your perspective. Susanne, yourself as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking part.
Thank you.
Everyone, we have our last day tomorrow. Hopefully you can make it there as well. We've been very consistent in terms of our attendees today, this week. So tomorrow's going to be about first party data strategies. I'll be actually running that and literally going to go through case studies of every single strategy that will be applicable for publishers to try today, irrespective of the depreciation of third-party cookies being delayed again. So do keep in chat, and thanks everyone for joining again. And until next time, have a great day and speak soon.